Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're diving into a thwarted mass shooting here in the Valley. The details of this one are pretty shocking. We'll also dig into how Las Vegas is responding to extreme heat to keep all of us safe as the mercury just keeps on rising. Plus, we get into why Las Vegas was just named one of the best cities in the country. And in our members-only bonus segment, we break down our weird relationship with parking after one resident made a bomb threat over a downtown parking fee. It's Thursday, July 2nd. I'm Jesse Merrick, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. I'm joined today by Yvette Fernandez, who's the regional reporter for NPR and the Mountain West News Bureau, and our executive producer, Layla Muhammad. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well.
Good. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, no easy way to get into our first topic. It's a real heavy one. One of the biggest stories of the week for sure, and pretty shocking too. Henderson police actually announced on Tuesday that they arrested a suspect over the weekend who they say had planned a mass shooting. It started Saturday morning when a woman called 911 to report a domestic dispute, telling police that her former spouse, 36-year-old Allison Howlett, had stolen her car and that the vehicle was loaded with firearms. She also told police that Howlett intended to either carry out a mass shooting or commit suicide by cop. Officers then tracked the vehicle to a parking garage at Sunset Station in Henderson, and after a tense negotiation, officers got Howlett to roll down the window, and when Howlett actually reached out for water that the officers had offered to her, they grabbed Howlett's hand and pulled them from the vehicle, and apparently Howlett had been sitting on a handgun and had a silenced MP5 submachine gun in the backseat as well. Then when officers searched the vehicle, they found 22 additional firearms and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. But it didn't stop there. It gets even crazier. When investigators executed a search warrant at Howlett's Henderson residence, they found 30 more firearms, including automatic rifles, grenade launcher attachments, and multiple suppressors. Metro also played an audio recording from 2024 in which Howlett explicitly threatened to carry out a mass shooting. Obviously, a very, very disturbing occurrence here. How did you guys wrap your head around the news this week of that going down?
Well, it made me think about how Metro is investing in their different departments. You know, earlier this year, the Sheriff McMahill announced the Meridian Project, which was a long-term investment into their counterterrorism program. And, you know, as summer gets hotter and, you know, kids are out of school, statistically, that's higher rates of domestic violence in the community. And also, you know, this is a mental health case, it sounds like, if this person was talking about doing this since 2024. So it just makes me think about where we're investing money in the community.
You know, we've seen a lot of these big events. I mean, you recall the Tesla bombing even. Mm-hmm. I mean, they can be all individual. I think that was one of the things that they talked about. These are all different cases. But I think what's important, too, is that, you know, Metro and the surrounding law enforcement agencies, they are doing a lot to prepare and to be on this kind of high alert. You know, they deploy more officers, both in uniform and plain clothes. They conduct extensive training. I had an opportunity to attend a training session that they had at it's a multi-agency task force facility that's just outside of Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And the multiple agencies they train to work both collaboratively and also to be cross-trained. And for example, you know, law enforcement gets training on some of the basic but potentially life-saving skills so that they can attend to the injured until the paramedics arrive, for example. And we also know, like you were saying, they've invested in a lot of other things, including a drone unit. And we know that there's high-profile, you know, situations like the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. They also get assistance from federal and, you know, national partners with low-flying helicopters, too. Yeah. So they are doing a lot to just be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and props to them for their response in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things, like, look, us here too on this podcast, a lot of people like to gripe and complain about, you know, some tactics that the police use and everything like that. I mean, this is one of those ones where, look, everybody has to sit back, tip your cap to them for this, because obviously many, many lives saved had this escalated, you know, and gone on further. But it's one of those deals too, where, and Yvette, you mentioned it, you know, we hear the term thrown around of high alert. Like, what exactly is that? It seems like a buzzword that's thrown out. What does high alert actually look like, especially for a city like Las Vegas?
It's all those things that we just mentioned. It's additional police, it's the cross collaboration, it's, the equipment that they have from drones to some specialized things that they do. Like even during, Formula One, when you're walking on the overpasses, they can see in, but many people can't see out as much. So things like that, where they actually think about visibility and what they could do with some of the low-flying helicopters and all of those efforts, and we can't forget that it really became a big, big deal after the mass shooting that we experienced here in Las Vegas, which is still considered, one of the biggest mass shootings in U.S. history in that regard, So that's when they really started deploying all of those, and they've got federal funding to start that multi-agency training center, and all of those things come into play, and they are important. We might not like it when we go to them with the restrictions, but you certainly do want to feel safe, because you never know. You never know what mental health issues somebody is dealing with, or you never know what else is happening, and you just want to go and enjoy it and be safe.
Yeah, well, and Layla, it kind of feels like that high alert. I mean, to Yvette's point, like we constantly are hosting events. You just threw out a ton of them. It almost seems like that's the new norm here in Las Vegas, which I think is probably a good thing given the profile of our city, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain protocols and tactics that they use specifically when there's fireworks shows on the Strip and they're closing down that area and they're expecting a lot of foot traffic on there. They will go down. And this I learned from a tour that I took with the Shine a Light Foundation, going into the tunnels underneath Las Vegas. Metro will go down there and do a sweep of the tunnels underneath the Strip as a security protocol, because they can't have anyone underneath the ground while all the fireworks are going off and everybody's flooding the Strip. So that's one of the specific tactics that they use around these events that don't go on year round. But 2 weeks ago during a press conference, the assistant sheriff came on and was talking about how they're really on high alert all summer. And the Meridian Project is a long-term investment, so not just for these specific holidays. And part of the Meridian Project is a 30% increase in staffing for their counterterrorism program. And included in that is, like Yvette was talking about, partnerships with international and domestic organizations. So I think that all is kind of culminating in high alert for the summer, definitely, while tourism is high in Las Vegas, but also a sense that Las Vegas is hosting events year round.
Yeah, it's nonstop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a protocol that they're taking, kind of being just high alert all the time in Vegas.
Yeah, and I could only imagine what it's like, being a local law enforcement or people just in charge of keeping us safe here in Vegas, being on high alert like that nonstop. Obviously, we can't thank them enough for doing it, for keeping us safe, because, again, we're just such a unique city in terms of how much we do and host. So we probably only hear, the tip of the iceberg of the threats that they respond to and stop, So again, shout out to them for their work, particularly with this one, but also ongoing as well. Step into the movies with the Neon Museum's new movie tour in the heart of Las Vegas. Take a guided walk through real neon backdrops that have lit up some of Hollywood's most memorable scenes. It's perfect for film lovers and Vegas fans who want to see the city through a cinematic lens. You can explore glittering neon landscapes that have actually appeared on the silver screen and see how Las Vegas has been portrayed in classic films and modern blockbusters over the decades. Discover how the La Concha lobby was a key setting in Martin Scorsese's 1995 film, Casino, and stand where Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone filmed their romantic evening as Ace and Ginger. You can trace even more movie history from pre-code Hollywood all the way to contemporary blockbusters to discover how Las Vegas earned its reputation as the entertainment capital of the world through film. Hear insider stories and fun trivia that bring these movie moments to life and capture unforgettable photos surrounded by the glow of real Hollywood-used neon. Join fellow cinephiles on a one-of-a-kind tour that turns the Neon Museum into your own movie set. Get your tickets today at neonmuseum.org.
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
And Yvette, speaking of, keeping us safe, heat is also something that's constantly becoming, an even greater threat for us here in the Valley, and particularly as I know we and Reno, I think, are the two fastest warming cities in the country right now. What's going on in terms of new developments, about how Las Vegas is trying to respond to heat here in the Valley?
Well, you're right, exactly. Heat can be deadly. And, we've experienced it here in Southern Nevada. And for example, in 2024 was really the deadliest year where over 500 people lost their lives due to heat exposure. That was according to the latest data, But there are a lot of significant moves forward in this area. I mean, this year, there's a new law that's took effect July 1st, which mandates that local municipalities with more than 100,000 residents include a heat mitigation plan as part of their master plan. And then in the spring, officials from Las Vegas and Clark County met with Phoenix and Maricopa County, and they gathered for the first heat summit here in Las Vegas. And so, the Phoenix metro area has a more robust heat mitigation plans.
Big time, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so those details were shared with officials here. And then during that summit, the RTC announced that it would be allocating funds from a federal grant that it just received. And the main focus of that is how extreme heat affects transportation. And in addition to that, a couple of years ago, RTC also received a different grant. This one was from NOAA. And it led them to create a heat map, which pinpointed literally down to the area code which parts of the metro area are the hottest. And of course, this just confirmed, the unequal distribution of heat. And we know that lower income neighborhoods have fewer trees than wealthier neighborhoods.
Yep.
So communities experience heat very differently.
And I wonder too, because you noted that there's the whole plan and procedures that took effect on the first. In terms of what some of that is, because I know Phoenix, again, they have a whole governing board that basically handles heat and everything like that. I know that they used something like a new sealant on a lot of the concrete and stuff like that helped lower the temperatures. Does it seem like most of this is things like that, and also trying to provide more shade, to your point of lower income areas not having as many trees and things like that? What's the big thing, the real action behind this stuff to lower the temperature in those areas?
Well, this grant was from the Federal Transportation Agency. And so that means that what they have to do is going to be related to that. So everything is going to be related to transportation. One is, increasing shade at bus stops, for example. So they have a new prototype, and they're going to be rolling that out later on this fall as to what the new shade is going to look like over bus stops. But in addition to that, there's also some of the things that you talked about, really examining, for example, how the concrete that we lay down here, how else can they do it so that maybe it could lower the radiant heat that it emanates just to bring down the temperature, because that is a big deal. We have all these roadways.
I saw a 12-degree difference with some of those with the roadways.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. Last year, I was able to go out with the Desert Research Institute, and they have this device where they measure surface temperature, and it is amazing the difference. We could just be under a tree and then step out a couple of feet from outside, from not being under the tree.
Yeah.
And the difference in temperature is, 20, 30 degrees.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
pretty significant.
Yeah, anyone who's been outside in Las Vegas and stood in the shade and then stood out of the shade definitely can feel that. I wonder,
Right.
Yvette, though, you talked about the bus stops, that prototype being rolled out around the fall. Is there anything this summer that we're going to see from this heat summit? Or how is Clark County reacting this summer? Are there any new heat mitigation tactics? Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that they talked about during the summit was how they were going to create a multi-agency and more well-rounded response, a heat mitigation strategy. So, for example, just to take one example, as soon as it gets to a certain degree here in the Las Vegas Valley, the only thing that really officials can do is to declare that they're going to be opening cooling stations. That's really all there is. But the cooling stations here, they're usually converted from, a community center, a school, a library.
Yeah.
And so they have limited hours, they have limited availability for things. They do bring out water to give out, but that's just a very limited response. Whereas in Phoenix, for example, they open those up, some of them for 24 hours. They also allow people to lay down, which they don't allow that. You can't lay down in a library. So you can't really get the respite is what these, experts are saying. But the problem with here in our desert area, in both Phoenix and Las Vegas, is that these extreme heat periods aren't just 1 or 4 days. They last for a week or months at a time. I mean, you remember last year that, Phoenix had more than 100 days at over 120 degrees. It was several weeks for us too at over 110, 115. We're really only like 4 or 5 degrees different. So the ability to really respond to those longer time frames is really what we're lacking, And the other thing too is that we were just talking about, these are all the different steps, things that can be done, strategies that can be potentially implemented. But, there's also other things that need to change. Like some of the subject matter experts I was able to talk about, for example, in the local OSHA office does have some heat regulations, but on a federal level, this administration has chosen to decrease some of those regulations. For example, doing away with routine on-site inspections. So that's not happening anymore. So, they're going to wait until after something happens rather than to try to prevent it, and which is not a good thing, really. And then one last thing, and this is the big one, which is that heat is technically not considered an official natural threat the way a tornado would be or a flood would be.
And so like a natural disaster,
right. So what does that mean? That means that communities cannot declare an emergency and then access the federal funding during these extreme heat events. And so that's a big deal. Lawmakers have introduced bills to try to change that, but that still needs to take place.
Yeah.
Well, and heat does claim more lives than all those other natural disasters, right? On average.
Combined.
Yeah. So that's where the disconnect is, where it's like, hey, what the hell? And look, I understand it's easy to sit here and be like, oh, well, yeah, it's hot, get over it. But I feel like that has to stop given, the numbers that show that and everything. In March, what was it? We were like 12 degrees hotter on average this year alone, right?
It was a record set in March, exactly. That is one of the things that these lawmakers and subject matter experts talk about, is that it's hard because it's like a silent killer. It's not visual like a flood or a tornado. Heat is heat, and we experience it differently. So it's almost like you just don't see it. So it hasn't risen to that, unfortunately, and hopefully now it will.
Yeah, and this is an important conversation to be having right now too, because we did get a little bit of a break from the heat in Las Vegas, but this summer,
this week has been great.
But this week, this weekend, the holiday weekend, it's supposed to be back up in the hundreds, and it's looking like it's going to stay there for a minute.
Right.
Just in time to screw us for the 4th. Thanks.
Exactly. And for visitors who might be listening to this, when we say a little bit of a break, we're talking like in the 90s. And
Put it in perspective. That's the key.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people are like, what do you mean?
There are levels to this heat game here in Vegas. That's for sure.
Right. 90s is good.
Yeah, that's a break for us.
All right, so we've hit on some pretty heavy topics so far. Let's lighten the load a bit here. For that, we're going to turn to Layla to dive into our final topic here, at least in the normal part of our show. Layla, it sounds like we're getting some love on the national scale. It's about time, right?
Yeah, I know, right? So Las Vegas actually climbed to number 7 on a new annual ranking of the best cities in America. And we're up from
go.
9th place last year. Yeah, so we're getting better, apparently. The list comes from Resonance, a research firm that studies city data, and it ranks Las Vegas ahead of larger cities like Dallas, Houston, Boston. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago took the top 3 spots, which seems like obvious to me.
Yeah.
But Resonance scores cities across 3 categories: livability, lovability, and prosperity. So those 3 cities I feel like get a lot of local love, but they're using economic data, quality of life scores, and online activity from platforms like Instagram and TikTok. It also factors in how well cities attract residents aged 25 to 44, along with visitation and business formation trends. The report says Las Vegas's jump was driven largely by tourism. The city ranked 3rd nationally for lovability, which that was a shocker to me. But
everyone
very
says
nice.
Vegas is empty. Come on now.
I know, quote unquote. We also ranked 3rd for Facebook check-ins, which I don't know who's using Facebook anymore.
Who's checking in on Facebook?
Yeah,
That's a
who's
bigger
checking
question.
in on
Who the hell's
Facebook?
doing that?
But apparently we're ranking 3rd there, 6th for Instagram posts, and 4th for shopping. At the same time, the report also points out Las Vegas still leans heavily on a few key industries, especially conventions. The city saw nearly 38.5 million visitors in 2025, while convention attendance held at around 6 million, helping support midweek business. Hotel occupancy stayed strong, according to the report, at just over 80%, with an average daily room rate of $184, among the highest on record. Clark County gaming revenue also ticked up for the year, and airport passenger traffic topped at 55 million despite recent declines.
So yeah, all those things is like ignore the headlines that say Vegas is going in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
At least according to a lot of those numbers. The thing though that I do take issue with, and you noted it there, Layla, in terms of some of the criteria and stuff like that. I think it's kind of crazy to throw in livability and prosperity and have New York in the equation, and also like livability in the sense of like being able to live prosperously in New York, where it's ridiculously expensive, and also LA as well. Chicago, I think, is, the unicorn there, that it's like in the Midwest and also fairly affordable, for like a larger city like that. But I sit back and I'm like, I poke some kind of holes in that one again when New York and LA gets there. I know people that live in those places love those places, so that obviously elevates it a ton. But I just wonder, like, Yvette, do you buy studies like this? Because we hear it all the time, and then when I go and comb through their criteria, I'm like, I don't know. And again, to see us coming at 7th, I wonder about the ranking. What's your take on it?
I want to quote you with, I don't know. Because there just seems to be, I don't know, it just doesn't jive to me, I feel like. I mean, we just got out of last year, them talking about how, tourism has declined significantly. And it has.
Vegas is dead.
It's not dead. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but that's what all the headlines were saying.
Right.
They were trying to take us down.
But we have to put that into context as well, too. It's not like, it's when you say, well, you're not a billionaire, you're only a millionaire.
Exactly.
That's the same kind of thing. Sure, tourism has declined, and we know the 2 biggest communities that visit Las Vegas are, people from Canada and people from Mexico, and both of them have declined, but it doesn't mean that people aren't still coming here and people aren't still spending money. But, I think one of the problems there was that the companies, the casinos, all of them, they got a little bit kind of greedy, and they started like raising the prices, where it's $20 for a bottle of water.
Yeah.
I mean, but even with that, just with what we have to offer as a city, I mean, there's no comparison. That's why it is what it is. There's no comparison in terms of, the gaming, the entertainment, all of that. But, like some of the criteria that they had, like the livability they talked about, they also took into account bike trail density. Hello.
We're getting better, though. We're getting better.
We're getting a little better in that area.
Henderson is leading that charge, I feel.
But remember during the pandemic how they closed down the Strip, and locals were riding their bike. Why don't they make, a dedicated bike lane that would help with congestion. It would help with air pollution. It would help with movability. There's so many things like that.
And for the folks that would argue against like safety and stuff like that too, like the Strip is basically like a New York City street. Like, let's keep it real in terms of the craziness. So like if it can work in New York, I think it can work here down on the Strip.
Yeah, but realistically, are they going to do that much construction on the Strip? Because that's going to take a while to rip up. I'm guessing like the median section would turn into some kind of bike lane, or you move the bus lane there. Yeah. And that's going to be a lot of construction that the Strip would have to close down for a while, I feel.
Well, one, they could take a lesson from Denmark, which, they just give dedicated lanes on the sides like that. And second, it's not like, the city can't do that, because look at all the retrofitting they've done to accommodate Formula One.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no, it's so true. That's the thing. If they can do it for them, they should be able to do it for the rest of us that live here and the folks that come and visit.
Exactly my point.
I do feel like the top 3 cities, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, have a lot of city pride that I feel like Las Vegas could be doing better at among locals, like loving our city and showing that. And I wonder if with the lovability factor being in there, I wonder if tourism is offsetting like our sometimes lack of city pride.
I think it is,
and boosting us up.
I think so. That as I read through the results, as you were going through it and talking about the criteria, and as I read the article, I felt like, oh, okay, so we're getting propped up as like a tourism joint. Like, how much do they factor in the locals for us? Whereas in the other areas, again, like New York and LA, they're probably very clearly talking to locals in terms of the lovability. I think if you talk to enough people here, our lovability score for locals would probably be fairly high. Just don't ask about parking, which is a discussion to get into in a few minutes. But right now, Yvette, you kind of got it going with some ideas of how to change things, particularly down on the Strip with that in the bike lane and stuff. What do you think Vegas actually needs to be the best city in the country, or to at least kind of continue our climb up this list?
I just think that they need to do a little bit more for locals who live there. I mean, I get it. Tourism is the economic engine for the city and for the state, and it brings a lot of benefits. But, let's not forget, there's real people who live here in real neighborhoods. I just think that they should do way more in terms of deals for locals. Like what happened to the parking free for locals? What happened to, why don't we get discounts to see shows? That it costs more to see a show here. Pick anybody, Earth, Wind, and Fire, anybody, and it costs more to see them here in Las Vegas than if you go to Phoenix and see them over there.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy, and why can't we have like things that we're this close, we're the playground for Southern California, but in Southern California, for example, is known for, movies and all the whole Hollywood thing. I mean, a little tiny thing like they'll play all the documentaries that were nominated for Academy Awards on a day. They have documentary day. Like, why can't we have something like that? It's too sparse, in terms of the reciprocity of what we can provide and what we get. So that's my little selfish thing about what locals should get. I
love it. Advocating for the locals. We're here for it. So Layla, that's a tough act to follow though. But what are you throwing down there to help us out here?
Yeah, I remember taking the bus in high school, and I used to go downtown from Henderson to volunteer at the Discovery Children's Museum, and that whole process was pretty draining, especially for like a young high schooler. So I would love to see our, and this is, I'm beating a dead horse, but to see our public transportation system a bit better.
What about the loop?
Yes.
Oh my God, don't get me started on the loop. That doesn't go out to Henderson and probably will never get out here or to Summerlin or Centennial or any of the suburbs. But
I set you up.
I would also love to see, going back to kind of like the heat mitigation and the heat summits. I'm really excited to see them roll out these new bus stops, because I think it's Japan or South Korea, they have like air conditioned bus stops, and you actually like walk into a little cube that is air conditioned, has seating, and you can get out of the heat, and you're not sitting there waiting for the bus and just melting. So I think we should get more creative with making our transit system more rideable and more just like enjoyable, add more buses, add more stops,
Right.
and just not make it so inconvenient to take, so everybody has to rely on
their car.
on a car or an Uber. Like if I want to go out downtown, I have to take an Uber, but I would love to have the bus as an option.
Oh,
It'd be cheaper.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be definitely a big one. As we were talking about this, I was thinking like, okay, add water. You know, as a Californian, I want more water. You know, so I was like, is there a way to get the beach? That was what would take us up there. But as you guys were talking, I was like, okay, well, here you're talking about transportation and things like that. Why not a lazy river down on the Strip? Take over the monorail, turn that into a lazy river instead.
Oh, wow.
I feel like we might have talked about an idea like that on the pod recently.
Yeah, I
can't
think
remember.
you were trying to put a river on the Strip before.
Yeah. But like, let's
So
do
you're
that.
saying we'd all have to get like paddle boards to go up and down the Strip?
But
Is that
that'd
what
be
you're saying?
fun though.
That would be
It's kind
fun.
of combining the bike trail, but just turning it into some sort of lazy river. We could be paddleboarding down the Strip. How sick would that be?
Instead of bikes, everybody gets paddle boards.
yeah,
Exactly.
and it could improve the public transit system a bit. You know,
And
it's
you
just a
cool
different
off.
way to
you
do
can
it.
cool off.
All right, it's time now for our members only bonus segment. And today we're talking about downtown parking frustrations that led to a bomb threat. Seriously, it's gotten that bad for us here. So today we're dissecting our weird relationship with parking, but you're only going to hear this segment if you join our Neighbors program. So if you want the tea on this one, head to membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas to become one of our neighbors and unlock access to each and every one of our weekly bonus segments here on the pod, and to take advantage of all the other great perks that come with being a neighbor as well. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas to sign up. But overall, guys, look, for some heavy, stuff that we dove into today, this was a fun one, so I appreciate both of your insights on kind of what's going down in the Valley this week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our executive producer is Layla Muhammad. Our creative producer, Jacob Solis. Our newsletter editor is Rob Katcheries. And I'm your host, Jesse Merrick. We also got additional production support from Katie McMurrin. Our music is by OG Moose, and our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah from the Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. We record this show on the traditional homelands of the Nuwuvi, the Southern Paiute people. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our free morning newsletter as well. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. Tomorrow, we're running a special Your City Could Be Better episode in our feed, so check it out. It's a fun one. You won't be disappointed. And we'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, take care and have a great 4th of July.